laugh. Tell me what you want.
Well, I'm looking for a couple of girls. Have the right, nice parts. I'm looking for a lot of good parts.
Honey, in case you ain't noticed, I not only got all the right parts, I got them in all the right places.
Frank Henenlotter is my pick for Best Exploitation Director, mainly because not only do his films deliver the gore, laughs, and titillation you expect from that genre, but at their core, they all have socially relevant themes and commentary inspired by his experiences of growing up in New York in the 50s and 60s. And these social commentaries still stand the test of time even today. Basket Case, his first feature on the surface, is a movie where a sentient collection of cancerous cells murders people and develops proclivities that you just really can't mention or show on YouTube in the first 30 seconds. But it is really about brotherly love and how society treats people who are either mentally or physically disabled. Brain Damage, his second film, is about a talking alien parasite that gives its host an unbelievable, pleasurable feeling, as long as the host feeds him human brains, preferably alive ones, which leads our protagonist to lose everything in life he holds dear. It's a not too subtle commentary on the crack cocaine epidemic that had swept New York in the 80s and was partly inspired by Henenlotter's own cocaine addiction. This week's retrospective, Frankenhooker, released in 1990, is his fourth film but third original premise, as his third feature was a sequel to Basket Case, a film starring a Penthouse Pet of the Year and enough nudity to make the YouTube bot tasked with emailing me about such things to melt down into a puddle of silicon. Hell, it even has a scene where a room full of hookers explode. Is actually about feminism, female beauty standards, sexual objectification, the hypocrisy of men, and the exploitation of women's bodies in general. On the surface, a sexploitation adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but the feminist themes start from the very beginning of the film, where we are introduced to our two main protagonists. Jeffrey Franken, a young man who lives in New Jersey, and he's a medical grad dropout who specializes in bioelectrical engineering. James Lawrence gives a great performance, kind of reminding me of Jeffrey Combs in all the right ways. He has that great mix of sincere but insane down to a T, much like Combs does in Reanimator, a film I highly recommend everyone watches. Also, go watch my review of it and its sequels. His fiancée, Elizabeth Shelley, is introduced being told by her mother to stop eating pretzels as they go straight to her hips, and even she says this.
Trouble? Nah, same old thing. Jeffrey's too strange and I'm too fat.
Patty Mullen, who plays the character, actually wore body padding to make her body look more chubby and less curvy than it is in reality, as she was a Penthouse Pet of the Year in 1988. So straight away, we are being primed about female beauty standards and how women struggle to uphold these from the very first time we see Elizabeth. She then dies in a hilarious freak lawnmower accident, leaving poor Jeffrey, who is besotted with her, on the edge of madness, with only her head for company, as all the other parts of her body were destroyed to the point they could fit in a jiffy bag. Now Jeffrey has a problem. He wants to bring Elizabeth back, but he needs body parts, and of course he wants to bring her back as a centerfold model, which he demonstrates by showing her pictures of her head stuck onto the bodies of ladies from porno mags. Now, the juxtaposition of Jeffrey wanting to turn her into a sexual plaything and Elizabeth's prior musings about her own body are fairly obvious. After racking his brain to try and come up with some form of solution for this problem, in a fairly bizarre scene he decides to drill his own brain in an attempt to stimulate it, an operation that gives him first the inspiration to kidnap air stewardesses, and after a bit more stimulation, he finally lands on the correct course of action. Hookers. Obviously, drilling parts of your brain wouldn't stimulate it, that would destroy it. The obvious conclusion here is that Jeffrey has to destroy his own brain, both morally and intellectually, to become misogynistic enough to conflate selling sex with the selling of body parts. A point hammered home by this line.
If I need female body parts, then I'll buy female body parts. And there's a place across the river where there are thousands of women anxious to sell their parts.
Or in other words, certain women are viewed as little more than sexual objects to be used as men wish. He then goes cruising through the red light districts of New York, just casually objectifying every woman he sees. Again, the fact he actually wants the women for body parts is used to show just how dehumanizing this everyday sexual objectification is, not just of these specific women, but all women. Having found a group of hookers he's happy with, he gets them all in a room to select the perfect one, which leads to the best scene in the entire movie, where all these hookers hilariously start exploding all over the place, having smoked Jeff's new super drug he's developed to try and entice them to be alone with him. The women also, just before they explode to be harvested for their body parts, turn into literal objects. Mannequins stuffed with explosives and fireworks. Some people would argue that's because this is a super low budget film and they just didn't have the special effects budget to make it look any more convincing, but I'm claiming it's an obvious statement on how society views these women, that they are literal objects. All of the hookers were actually strippers from a local strip joint, paid various amounts for a sliding scale of nudity from full frontal, which was eventually cut from the final film, to just showing a bare ass. Seeing as this was a SAG-affiliated film, the strippers ended up being admitted into the Screen Actors Guild. The whole objectification theme culminates in Jeffrey rebuilding Elizabeth's body out of the choicest parts he could save from the exploded hookers, including him fondling a plate of breasts, looking for the perfect pair like it's searching a bowl of Skittles for your favourite flavour. Once revived though, Elizabeth is only capable of exclaiming lines that had been previously uttered by the prostitutes earlier in the film. Frankenhooker has no new original lines. This of course horrifies Jeffrey, highlighting his and society's hypocrisy in the way that it sees women as sexual objects. He was more than happy to farm the women for their sexy body parts, but he's unable to accept that his girlfriend or wife might use such language and mannerisms as the hookers would. Then the Frankenhooker heads out into the streets and ends up killing a whole bunch of guys where her literally electrically empowered body makes them explode, with the men still objectifying her to a comical extent, even though she looks like this. I mean, you probably still would. Patty Mullen is very attractive after all. We even get a very unattractive, and I may say fairly manly bar woman, chastising Frankenhooker for eating pretzels. Her response is to just growl at her rather than meekly submit to not eating them, as she had earlier in the film. All of this leads to the Frankenhooker being damaged by the hooker's pimp, and Jeffrey having to take her back to his lab and attempt to repair her. An attempt that is even more successful than his original attempt at Frankenhooker, as she is returned to her normal self. Until she of course realizes what he has done. Just as she's beginning to rant at Jeffrey about returning her into a Frankensteinian monster, the pimp sneaks up on him and cuts his head off, before he too is devoured by a collection of reanimated prostitute parts. It's weird, and I don't know if I can be really bothered censoring all the boobies, so watch the movie and that scene for yourself. Even though it is weird and fits wonderfully into the usual oeuvre of B-movie exploitation films, it also serves a purpose within our feminist theme, as a pimp is literally devoured by the objectification he helped stoke. The film closes with Jeffrey being reanimated by Elizabeth. Only one drawback: she had to give him a woman's body, a fact that horrifies him. The final scene of the film is essentially a triple underlining of the hypocrisy of Jeffrey. He was perfectly fine with the concept of improving Elizabeth's body with better, more sexy parts, but the thought that she has done that to him disgusts him immeasurably. So those are pretty much all of the feminist themes that run through Frankenhooker. There's also a floating eyeball attached to a brain that just watches many scenes, and this is possibly a commentary on us, the audience, as the consumers of a lot of the sexual objectification of women in film and just society in large. Beyond the feminist subtext, Frankenhooker, like all of Henenlotter's films, is also a very good low-budget exploitation flick. You get all of the usual trappings you'd expect from that genre of film, ridiculous amounts of gore, a whole lot of laughs, and some really cheap and obvious but fun special effects. Patty Mullen is great as the actual titular character, and I'm surprised she didn't appear in any more films after this one, as the two films I've seen her in, this and Doom Asylum, absolute stone-cold cult classics, and she's a big reason why they are so damn great. It's also only 80 minutes long, so there's no real time for you to get bored with it, as the whole plot skips along at enough pace that something interesting is always happening on screen. If you are a fan of B-movies in general, and exploitation flicks specifically, and why wouldn't you be if you've made it this far into the video, I of course highly recommend Frankenhooker to you, along with Henenlotter's whole filmography. If you enjoyed that, then please like, comment and subscribe, because next week we're tackling a hamster-eating allegory for fascism.